leaving in a couple of weeks to go on expedition in Mexico, in the central mountains of southern Mexico, to a cave system called Chevé. Chevé is the second deepest cave in the Western Hemisphere currently, and again, is still being explored. And it has the potential to be the deepest cave in the world. It has hydrologic activity, so there's underground streams and stuff that have been dye traced, and it has a depth potential of over 2,600 meters. The deepest cave in the world, Veriavkina, that I mentioned, is a little over 2,200 meters in depth. So the Chevé system has the potential to be deeper than that. But there are different segments of that cave system. It's all connected by water flow, but it hasn't been fully explored. And so we don't consider a cave system sort of connected until a person has traversed it all. So there's the bottom areas of the Chevé system. You run into a relatively horizontal passage that's filled with water, what we call sumps.
Yep.
And those are, some of that has to be explored by cave diving, which is logistically very complicated. And so there's still an effort and push to try to connect some of the other upper reaches of the Chevé system to the resurgence where the water exits. And I don't know the exact numbers, but I think the upper entrances are close to 3,000 meters, and the resurgence caves are down around 400 meters elevation. So there's still, there's still a lot of unknowns and a lot of exploration going on, and potential to find longer and deeper caves.
And I guess there's a huge time cost involved, because you've got to get into the system, get all your gear and everything you need for however long you intend on being there to a certain point. I suppose the last explored line in the sand, as it were. And then, I mean, how much real exploration can you actually do in a few weeks by the time you've got everything in there and got everything back out again?
Yeah, it depends a lot on the cave and the cave system. So the Chevé system that I mentioned is very deep, and it's not the most remote cave passage by distance, but in terms of travel time and logistics, it's probably one of the more complicated. The frontiers of that cave, to push those frontiers and do additional exploration. You're right; it takes a lot of time, a lot of people power, a lot of equipment. And it's a very vertical cave, so it requires a lot of rigging and things like that. So it takes a lot of time to set all that up. So the expedition that's going on started just a couple of weeks ago and will be underway and through the end of April. So it's something like 14-week long expedition.
Wow.
And so that's the kind of scale required to do all the setting things up, getting camps established. And it's sort of been sort of one of the associations that people can get some better understanding of how it's done is it's a little like high elevation mountaineering in reverse. If you go to high 8,000 meter peaks in the Himalaya or whatever, they do a series of camps, and they have Sherpas that carry equipment or sort of rig the route to get from one camp to the next, and then bring supplies. And we do the same sort of thing in these large deep cave expeditions. There's a series of camps. There's Sherpa trips that happen to bring gear and food and supplies into those camps. And then you have push teams at the deepest camps that are doing the exploration and mapping.
Wow. And forgive my ignorance, but I can just imagine myself running out of AA batteries. If you're underneath the ground for that many weeks, I mean, it's a vast quantity of food, water, toilet paper, so on, and sleeping bags, clothing, so on and so forth. Because you can't stay wet and cold 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Otherwise, you'll get quite poorly quite quickly. it just sounds like the logistics to get electricity down there to go and ensure that your lights are charged enough. I mean, talk me through, how do you pull off something like that?
Yeah, so for the main use for electricity underground would be for lighting. We use headlamps and helmet mounted lights, and there's been advances in technology. So nowadays you have very high efficiency, very bright LED emitters. And then the other sort of big benefit in recent years has been the advancements in lithium ion batteries. So you can have very high charge density batteries that are rechargeable and, very efficient LEDs. And so a fairly small battery pack can power light for up to a week of active caving. So they're pretty amazing. So typically, it's fairly uncommon for cavers, even on these multi-month expeditions, to go underground and stay underground for that entire time. I think typical camps would be a week to 2 weeks. People will go underground either as part of an exploration team or maybe a supply team, and then they'll come back to the surface, recharge batteries, recharge their souls. I guess it takes a little bit out of you to spend so much time in the dark underground. Anyway, yeah, LED emitters and lithium batteries have kind of revolutionized cave exploration. Back in the old days, it was more common to use calcium carbide, what are called carbide lamps. And so a lot of cavers use those, and you could carry enough calcium carbide with you to, spend weeks underground. But it's heavier, and it has waste byproduct you have to deal with and that sort of thing. You're dealing with calcium carbide. So it's all but been eliminated now. Most everybody's using lithium ion batteries.
And how's that readjustment after a week or week plus underneath the ground in the dark, and then you suddenly come back up to the bright sunshine and the heat and the noises and everything else? How's that feel?
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of people are curious about that. The longest I personally spent underground is 11 days. I've done a number of 8-day periods underground. It's you don't lose the pigment in your skin. You might get a little paler, but you also don't lose your vision, and your eyes don't. Skin doesn't grow over your eyes. So I don't notice much difference. Some of your senses do seem to be a little more sensitive when you come out from underground. There are sounds. You are using artificial lights when you're underground. So when you come back to the surface, sometimes the sun seems a little brighter. Definitely the sounds of nature are a little more, unfamiliar, I guess. And for a lot of people, the thing that strikes them is the smells and stuff that you have on the surface, just the smells of nature, which you don't have as much of when you're underground. So those things become a little bit more, you're a little more sensitized, I guess, to those things after spending a while.